Welcome, everybody. I'm John Nash, and this is the Department of Educational Leadership Studies Fireside Chat with Dr. Nataliya Ivankova. I'd like to introduce Dr. Ivankova for a moment as we get underway, and then I'll tell you a little bit about our agenda. So, Dr. Ivankova is a professor in the Department of Health Services Administration with a dual appointment in the School of Nursing at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, better known as EAB. She received her PhD in Administration Curriculum and Instruction from Nebraska-Lincoln in 2004, and she has a Master's in Public Health and Epidemiology from UAB in 2014. But what we appreciate about her is that she is nationally recognized for her publications addressing empirical and methodological aspects of qualitative and mixed methods research, particularly two books that are quite popular. One is familiar to our students in our department, Educational Leadership Studies, and that is the Mixed Methods Application Action Research. And another one that is out there is Mixed Methods Research, A Guide to the Field, which is co-authored with Vicki Plano-Clark. But as an applied research methodologist, Dr. Ivankova teaches courses in mixed methods, qualitative research. She mentors doctoral students and serves as a key personnel on key projects funded across many disciplines. And you won't be surprised, she directs a graduate certificate in applications of mixed methods research. Dr. Ivankova, welcome to the Fireside Chat.
Well, thank you, John, and thank you everyone for, inviting me and also, making this happen. I am honored to meet with you in this sort of informal way and address the topic of my heart, the intersection of mixed methods and action research. And I just want to say that I'm originally from Ukraine, and that's why you see my Zoom background, reflecting the sunflowers, the national flower of Ukraine, in support of the country and its people who are fighting for their independence from Russia nowadays. So this is the least I can do, but as I already shared with John, sitting here feeling helpless, because, you would want to be there and participate in combat or be of any active help. Well, which leads us very nicely to action research, because it is action oriented or action focused, right? So we do action research to make things happen and makes good things happen. In other words, bring a positive change. So I am now open to your questions.
Super.
And thank you, Luyan, for your comment in the chat. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. And our hearts go out to your homeland, and thank you for being with us in these difficult times for you. I appreciate the fact that we can talk about this topic today, and we have our chat broken up into sort of 3 chapters. We've solicited questions from our community, and we brought them together, and we'd like to pose some ideas to you about mixed methods action research in general, and then talk a little bit with you about your recommendations in using mixed methods action research. At that point, then we'll have about 15 minutes left, have some open questions from the community here that's with us, and then we can close out from there. So does that sound good?
Yes, thank you, John.
Well, let's just go right to the brass tacks of the matter. What is methods action research, and maybe more importantly, why should we consider using it?
This is actually a great question, because this is what I was asking myself when I was, writing the book. And before that, I started teaching the course on the intersection of mixed methods and action research. So what is mixed methods action research? And I'm so glad that the acronym that I coined in the book actually was picked up, because it's an easy way to express. Just a little bit of kind of like a segue because, as I was doing my homework, trying to understand the backgrounds and how to combine both, of course, I was reviewing lots of writings, lots of articles that reported on doing action research studies with mixed methods, because we know that mixed methods, or both quantitative and qualitative methods, were commonly used in action research. So I saw that there was this hesitancy how actually to call it, how to write, like in the methods, how to describe the approach. And, I saw different ways of, researchers saying, oh, we used mixed methods, and we also used action research of powers. We've got, all those different things. And I thought it would be great to combine them. And why combine is because methodologically and conceptually, we actually combine these two approaches in a very meaningful and effective way. Because again, in my research, I saw many commonalities between the two approaches, which I later described if you are familiar with my writings, and I can actually show the screen now because I have prepared some slides for you. But let me see which one. So yes, you see this one. This is actually how we think about intersection of mixed methods research with action research is when you embed mixed methods in a meaningful way or one of its core designs within a larger methodological action research framework. So all of you know what action research is, right? It's action oriented. It addresses an issue of practical importance for a group of people or community. And by community, of course, I understand any community, not just necessarily residential, but also, community of people who are united by some common goal, professional interests, etc. Yes, and then, of course, mixed methods research, which is a meaningful integration of stakeholder engagement, qualitative methods or approaches with outcome-focused quantitative methods. So the intersection that you see, this kind of very, kind of simple graphic, this is how we see this intersection. And when I was doing, researching further in my conceptualization of mixed methods action research, what's this?
I don't believe catching your graphic. I don't know if other.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot to share the screen. I'm so sorry.
All right.
Yeah. I saw that something was missing. I'm so sorry. Okay, this is it. So you see it now, right? It's good. I'm glad you said it earlier than later. So this is, yes, the small graphic. See how, we think about intersection of mixed methods and action research. And I want you to understand this right from the very beginning, because, I know there is some kind of criticism in the field, or what it was at least when, some writers mixed methods authors were writing about mixed action research is that, oh, this is just one of the mixed methods designs. No, we have all respect for action research as an established, research methodology with its, history and unique characteristics. So, we really treat this in a very or at least, a group of researchers like myself, we treat it very, with all respect to action research. So you see this intersection, and then when we think about what makes this intersection actually possible, in my further research, I sort of looked at the three groups of characteristics that are common across the three approaches, which again I emphasize makes it kind of easier and also legitimate to combine the two approaches. So, which makes me, think about this unique intersection as a more advanced application of both of mixed methods research as well as enriching action research in its in many different ways. Because again, I go back to this thought that or idea that action research has long applied to the combination of of quantitative and qualitative methods. So making them in a more bringing them together in a more meaningful way within an action research cycle makes the study more rigorous and of a high quality and probably more effective. And why use it is because, I see action research is very, effective way nowadays when we need to close the gap between research and practice. And action research allows us, along with CBPR approaches, which actually fall under the umbrella of action research as we now know, enhance this translation of research into practice. And I'm looking now as well at mixed methods action research as a way or route for, or a foundation even for implementation science, because through action, you can bring in the change in the community. Because if you don't get collaborative efforts, if you don't get stakeholders to work with you and buy into your ideas as a researcher, right? So there is no way to establish sustainability of a positive change. So have I addressed your question?
Yes, great. And I think you teed up the segue to the next one, which is really for newbies out there who are maybe enamored with the idea that this may have possibilities. What would you say to folks when they ask you, when should we consider using MMAR?
Well, as I already said, this is a way to address an issue of practical importance for for a group of people, and there are many situations when you can use it. Um, oh, I actually would like. I know you probably are familiar with the mixed methods action research framework that I developed. But when I think about the mixed methods action research process, and here again, I can support my vision with a graphic here. Okay. That, in mixed methods action research, we use some very unique characteristics of the research process in addition to the traditional approaches to how we do research. So you can see this graphic, right? So you see the traditional, kind of continuum moving from research purpose and research questions to selection of methods and creating inferences or study conclusions. But in the mixed methods action research, everything is shaped by stakeholder interests or, stakeholder perspectives. Because, again, I emphasize, if we don't engage stakeholders in a collaborative way in research, and, we probably won't achieve, the desired outcomes. So you see, the research purpose is informed by a practical issue, and it is very context specific. That's why we speak about mixed methods studies as context specific, practically focused, and action oriented. And then, of course, we use mixed methods, for the methodology, which is a meaningful integration of quantitative and qualitative approaches. And then the outcome of a mixed methods action research process is an action for change, right? And it's not only a change, but it should be a sustainable change. That's why we need to know upfront what the community needs are to design an action or intervention that will be meaningful to the community that they can relate to. And if I move to another graphic, let me see here. This is the framework that some of you may be familiar with, that I developed to help again explain the mixed methods action research process. And this framework relies, and this is where I give all the credit to Kurt Lewine, who coined the term mixed method action research back in 1949, right? And he developed those methodological steps of doing action research. And those 6 phases that you see here in this graphic: diagnosing, reconnaissance, planning, acting, evaluation, monitoring, actually were originated in his approach to action research. So this is the action research cycle, and these are the 6 phases or stages or steps, whatever you call them, that you go through, when you develop an action and implement the action, as well as evaluate it. But in the mixed methods framework, each step is informed by mixed methods research. And this is what makes it unique, because you can actually see how mixed methods can be useful and are, effective in informing every step. So when I explain the framework, you start, with the diagnosing phase, and this is where you start thinking how to address, the issue of practical importance using mixed method research. In other words, what would be the rationale for using mixed methods in terms of giving you better, more more comprehensive approaches to addressing the issue, as well as generated more, more informative conclusions. And then, as you move through the cycle, you actually conduct full-scale, just traditional mixed method studies in the reconnaissance or evaluation phases. Because in reconnaissance phase, you conduct in other words, the real needs assessment, right? Reconnaissance is Kurt Levine's term. You conduct a needs assessment. You explore the needs. What are the community needs? So where do we stand with the issue? What the issue is, and how we can address it. And then you use the inferences from this reconnaissance phase to inform the planning of the action or intervention. I use these words interchangeably because by action, I understand intervention. And then, of course, during the acting phase, when you implement, right, the intervention, you also implement it based on what you have learned during the reconnaissance phase by integrating the results from quantitative and qualitative data. And then during the evaluation phase, when you evaluate the outcomes of your initial intervention, you again can apply any of the frame evaluation as a mixed method study using one of the mixed methods designs and conduct a full-scale mixed method study and generate inferences that will inform potential monitoring of the action and further decisions about what to do. Because, with the intervention, because, in Kurt Levine's and actually in the whole concept of action research, and that's what I like about it. It's very flexible and it allows going back and forth between the phases. You make very quick decisions based on the outcomes of the evaluation, whether the intervention is working. Maybe it just needs to be tweaked in the, again, evaluated. It's sort of like monitoring phase, or it needs to be completely revamped. And maybe we need to do more reconnaissance. Maybe we have left out some of the interests of some certain groups, populations, and whatever we designed is not working for everyone. So we can go back to the reconnaissance phase. And we can collect, do more mixed method studies, conduct, collect more quantitative and qualitative data, do replanning, and then implement another, program in a, refined way. And on it goes, in its cycle, and maybe even return to the diagnosing phase and see whether we have diagnosed the issue correctly. So there's a lot of flexibility and going back and forth, which may seem messy to some, but if you think of it, this is how we do research. And all how we should do research, because you cannot develop a good intervention just from one application, right? So there are all these different flexibility possibilities within the cycle to actually establish the sustainability of the action. And maybe, since we know that the environment changes and people's needs are changing continuously in the environment, here we bring the socio-ecological framework, right, to explain what's going on with us as living beings, as well as our interactions with society, as well as research that we do. We may be actually continuing this cycle on and on, not necessarily us, but someone who, will be on continue doing those interventions. This is kind of like conceptual. This is kind of like, a 10,000 foot of view, but this is what I think is going on when, of course, when you apply action research, which is enhanced by mixed methods. And one more idea that I want to share with you, and this idea actually I developed later in further publications of the book was done. I gave advice, actually work more on the advice of to the researchers, how actually to apply the framework to the actually to when you do action research to the problem that you are of interest, and you sort of take those 6 steps or stages from the action research cycle, and I call it the mixed method study process model. And you delineate, the steps, what you can do within each of those phases, and you decide how you can approach or when to approach even this. I also want to mention what I like about action research is that you can, and this is not me, this is actually was advanced, by the mixed action research authors, that you can enter the action research cycle anywhere, right? Like you can start, of course, you always start with the diagnosing, right, of the issue, because you need to understand the issue, what the issue is, and do some homework, about it. But then you can either enter the study through the reconnaissance phase, because if we don't know anything about the issue or as how it is affecting the community that you study, or maybe if the intervention is already going on, like, with some, communities or professional communities, you have programs that are working, for instance, at the university, you have mental health issues, counseling, but with COVID, it was revealed that, it's not addressing all the issues, and with other movements, political movements that were occurring at the same time in US, it was just not addressing all the needs of the student population. So you can first, go kind of do the evaluation of what is missing, how the current intervention is working, and then based on that, design or refine the design a new program using the action research cycle. So that's one of the beauties of action research. That's what I like about it. So again, we call this a tool, or this is how it's began to be called in the literature, how you actually apply the framework. And again, why we need this is because it helps you as a researcher to conceptualize, first kind of lay out, what you're going to do with your study. In mixed methods, we like visuals, and it helps us better. It is, of course, when we have this such a complex combination of the two methodologies, this help. Images help, and then using those, of course, in your own research and communication with your team members and stakeholders, and also teach about it, to your students. For instance, in my teaching, and this is an article that I have used, which is a great example from, for instance, Ray Meyer's study down to look at the effectiveness over full prevention guideline intervention to actually implement the full prevention guidelines for older patients in the acute nursing ward in a hospital. So this is how I sort of unfolded what they did in the study and mapped it on the framework. See, kind of every box is filled in with what was done. For instance, for diagnosing, the need was to identify effective implementation strategies, and using mixed methods research. With for the reconnaissance phase, a full concurrent design mixed method study was conducted to guide data collection and analysis. Data where it was drawn from the quantitative survey of nurses and also individual interviews of nurses. And then the planning occurred, engaged nurses and having the steering group committee meetings with using the results from the reconnaissance phase, and looking at the models that have been reported in the literature, which is very important step. Not just reinventing the wheel, right? Redesigning the wheel, but looking first what has been advanced in the literature that has worked and how we can adapt this to the needs of the specific unit. And then implementing the models that the nurses have selected that best fit their needs, and then doing evaluation twice in the mid-cycle, and then after some period of time, with again surveying the nurses and talking with nurses. And they didn't do a patient survey. And then a continued monitoring of the intervention in actually disseminating and expanding into other units or other wards in the hospital. And you see the dashed tab arrow leading from monitoring to action, because this is what the authors discussed in the discussion section of the article, that they will continue monitor the intervention and through acting and evaluation, and refining it based on the results of the continuous evaluation. So I just gave this background so that you can see how you map this framework, and then you sort of unfold it or map it back to that process model, and actually communicate, or again, using this graphic with your team members, and also for your own understanding what may happen during the study as you plan the full cycle of the project. So I don't want to bombard you with all this information, but I hope that I addressed your question, John, and I will stop here. So if you want, we can return to this later and I can give you more details
Yeah.
about that.
No, absolutely. Thank you. That was a great introduction.
And thank you, John, for doing this. I'm so impressed, guys, with that you are using this approach because that you are actually using the words action research, because we all know that this approach has not yet been fully accepted in the United States, unfortunately, or being called action research directly. Although the whole world is using, especially like in New Zealand, Australia, UK, Africa, Europe. The governments are funding full scale, action research studies, which is very impressive.
Yeah.
Because they realized early on that this is the only way to bring the change and close the gap between research and practice.
Yeah.
When you engage the communities with research in a very active way and bringing the change.
So, wanted to ask you some questions now about your recommendations in using MMAR. Now that we see we have some people in the midst of directing it or doing it, but very nice overview a moment ago, the components. And so, but maybe the question I'd like to ask is, are there any pitfalls that we should know about as newcomers to the process?
Well, thank you, John. This is actually quite a complex question because, again, as nothing is simple in mixed methods action research or any methodology or approach where you combine or intersect several methodologies, right? Because each one comes into this, a combination with its their own advantages as well as sort of like pitfalls, as you call them. So I always advise my students, whatever you do in terms of the components of the mixed methods action research process, you should consider the general kind of I'm sorry, someone is mowing the grass. It always happens. Yes, I know. So yeah, consider, the issues that can arise from the application of the just doing research, right? That you need to be watchful for. Then the issues related to action research, specific issues that you need to be watching for and trying to plan accordingly, and mixed methods. So it's always like this, not even like the triangle, but it's like a bunch of those. But what I want to emphasize, and I reflected on that, what is important when you think about the mixed methods action research, of course, besides the need of using it. So you really need to have a clear idea of what are the purpose of each phase in the action research cycle is or will be when you design a study, and how you can use the mixed methods to support this purpose in a very efficient way. Because you don't want to bring mixed methods just for the sake of bringing and say, hey, I used mixed methods, which oftentimes happens, No, you don't want to do that. But it's really important to understand what you want to gain and actually where you want to enter, as I call it, the action research cycle, where they need to start with the reconnaissance or the evaluation phase and going from there. So understanding the purpose of the entry into the cycle as well, based on the research problem that you are going to address, as well as the purpose of each phase, is important. Then I recommend, and this is in the early chapter of the book, to have a study general plan, independent of where your entrance point into the cycle is. Have a study general plan where you will outline all the critical components of your study, and also list the expectations, because since action research is action oriented, you need to have the expectations set up front, because you are aiming at bringing a positive change, right? Or, which you cannot just do from achieve from just one application of the program. And also one research study. So expectations you build, you work toward those expectations. And of course, from the mixed method standpoint, you need to think how you will be integrating the methods, not just bringing in quantitative and qualitative because, you do so, but think how you would meaningfully integrate and what this integration can give you ultimately in terms of giving you more than the sum of the two. And then, of course, as you know, the critical component is engagement and partnership with stakeholders, because whatever program or intervention you design or action, that will determine if you do not take into account stakeholders' views, perspectives, and needs or wishes. The intervention will fail as soon as you leave the community. So it's so important to engage the stakeholders right away, with your study and make them feel the ownership, make them co-researchers, co-partners, and even be like take on this kind of like humility and be humble and all those kind of evidence, but be respectful to the community. And if something seems not right as they are, whatever they're saying to you, just don't tell them you're wrong. Try to understand their side and try to reconcile with, as you're researching more, of course, methods wise. But it's so important to rely on the stakeholders and also explore the resources that they can help you with by doing the study. And of course, their connections in the community with recruitment and everything. So in my book, again, for every procedural chapter, I have some advice for how you can actually practically engage, stakeholders with this or that in terms of their abilities to conduct the study. And of course, it's important to build our, research capacity of the community, which is a huge topic, and a lot of have been interest, village about that. And then as well, consider, probably the advantages as well as the pitfalls of that flexibility of the action research cycle, right? That we just talked about. Because, yes, we know that we can go and move back and forth, but you need to be very careful in kind of do it in a rational way and not overdo it because, and then again, watching the timeline because you cannot do stay for a very long time and going back and forth between reconnaissance and planning just because you just need to do something to go forward with the study, right? Especially if you are doing the dissertation. So you really need to think what can be done for now, like take like a small scale approach, and very focused and trying to avoid that pitfall of getting very delayed and spending more time than is needed on just those steps. This is just some of the ideas that come to my mind. And of course, the pitfalls are related, and you all know this, to the ethical considerations that you can easily get into, like some kind of, issues if you not carefully build your relationships with the community and, of course, follow all the ethical standards in research because again, as I said, in this approach, like you have a a threefold sort of packet, or like a bucket of three to address, like issues related to research in general, ethical issues related to mixed methods, where we talk about participant burden, engaging participants more than necessary and for multiple times, which creates this participant burden, as well as lack of anonymity because you need to follow up with certain individuals, based on their, for instance, quantitative survey responses. And then the ethical issues that stem from action research, which are huge because in action research, you are actually working within your community, the people. And if you're doing research in your own set, in your own classroom, then you are sort of like or your students are in power dependency upon you as an instructor, right? So we have, there's a lot written about that. But all these issues come into play when you do mixed methods action research study. That's what you need to consider very carefully, very carefully.
These are great pieces of advice for new researchers and doctoral students embarking on their work. I wonder also if you have thoughts for colleagues who help direct this kind of work with students who are maybe embarking on, they've done mixed methods, maybe they've done some action research. But what advice do you have for dissertation directors as they coach students through the process?
Well, my probably first advice is, and this is what because I also teach a class, and I always tell my students who work in groups, design team projects, and mixed methods action research projects, think small and focused, or think start, locally, right? So that's how action research starts. You start with a kind of local, addressing the issue at the local level, and then if action is a good one, if it's working, then you can expand it to other communities. And we know that there are global studies. Global studies have been done across countries, action research studies, which is amazing because people tend to think, oh, action research is very small, limited to classroom or to some unit, right? No, this is where you start because you cannot develop a full-scale actionable intervention, that would address, a large group of people. I'm currently teaching a mixed methods applications in community-based action research class, and one of the student groups were addressing the issue of mass querying, attitudes to mass querying and how to, exploring the community needs with, those policies. And they have engaged, like in their design, they were like talking about all those multiple stakeholders going through up to CDC, in engagement in studies. And stop, you just cannot do this because it's so huge. Just start small, start with this specific community where you know that people are not compliant and see why and what can be done. And then what recommendations can you produce so that, a positive change can be achieved, and then expand based on the positive results. So, yes, so this would be my number one advice, because, our students always try to save the world with one dissertation.
That's right.
And yes, and also, as I said earlier, it's so important to identify the entry into the action research cycle. But I know that in your program, you actually ask the students to do the full cycle, right, for the dissertation, which is great. But if you are thinking of a, more focused dissertation, so that's what is important. See what you can do. And, like for instance, in my class, and this is just a class project, or, like every year I teach this class. Last year, and I like when, we have that. So one student group actually, they started vaccination, hesitancy in a very local community in Alabama. And they they designed their study for the reconnaissance phase. So just this part. Because they wanted to explore the perceptions of the community and their needs, and how to change this kind of like negative attitude. And then another group looked at the mental health services for women with not able to get pregnant, and someone, there's always someone who is rooted in that community, who works in this community, brings in this idea because they already saw that the program that is there or is not specifically helping these women. They feel very discouraged. They feel very insecure. The quality of life is not good. So they started with the evaluation phase. So what needs to be done to revamp that plan and how you can improve this program, because the program already exists, but why it's not working. See, this is just different focuses, but you enter the cycle, right? You enter it somewhere. Oops, sorry. And you enter it from the one point, and then you decide how to move forward. But I don't recommend starting studies from scratch, like in this last example, because, if you already have a program in the community, do your homework, see what has been done. What has been done about this issue and how it has been addressed in the past, and see what has not been working, and then decide how to move forward. And then, of course, as like general advice for any research study would be use rigorous methods. And of course, here I would recommend, using a mixed methods action research framework, not just because I developed it, but because I already, receive feedback that it's helpful just to conceptualize, the process, as well as see how to do the study in a rigorous way, and also use this, process, mixed methods action research study process tool to map and, to map the study steps. Kind of use it as a blueprint for your study, and plan carefully. Of course, careful planning. We talk about planning for integration in mixed methods research. If you don't plan for it, it will be very hard to later know how to do it. So you really, this is advice that I always tell the students: spend time at the planning stage before you move forward, because then you would lose much more time later when you will sit there trying to figure out what do I do with all the data, whether I really collected the right data, right?
Yeah. Good timing then to move to our Q&A. And I'm getting questions both in the chat and also on my other channels here. I wonder if I could pose a couple of questions that we're hearing from the folks that seem to be of interest. I've posted one here from Elizabeth Reed, who's a doctoral student in our program, and she said she would love to hear you speak to the value of mixed methods in an education culture that continues to prioritize quantitative data, student scores, and how can we lead for change in this area?
Well, it's actually very interesting that you bring this concern from educational field, because in my perception, and I am from educational field, my degrees are in education, and I worked for my first 9 years at UB were in the School of Education. Then I moved in the Health Services Administration department to a completely quantitative, department with, all the dissertations had been done or were done at the time using secondary data analysis and longitudinal data sets. Yes, I know with the child no left behind, no child left behind, quantitative measures and scores began to be emphasized more. But education is more advanced as a field in using mixed methods, and we see great studies using mixed methods. Well, how to enhance this? My suggestion would be just again, just for example, do research, publish it. This is how we learn, right? This is how we establish ourselves. Like everybody helps. Like not what now we do with Ukraine. I've been posting, like some kind of, flag or a background helps to support morale and, show that you're responding. The same was, research. The more you do, the more you publish quality work. In this case, we speak about mixed methods and action research. That's the chance to enhance its application, because how we write books or how we write methodological articles, we look for examples. We don't invent examples. We look for examples of published work. And if we see a great example, we use it. We advertise it through our work, or, people see it, I feel this is, this would be one of the ways to, bring awareness of the, of course, the possibilities of what mixed methods, as well as the intersection of mixed methods with action research offers to address complex educational issues.
Really nice. I have another question coming from the doctoral cohort. It's Owen Saylor is asking, how do you control the urge to jump straight to reconnaissance when you think you know or have maybe a bias about what you're going to find in the diagnosis phase?
Well, yeah, you need diagnosis because, yes, you know about the issue, but you still have, even if you still have to think how to address it from the mixed methods perspective. This is where you have to develop your general study plan, as well as, think about the expectations, right, that you are working on, why you need this action to be developed in the first place, what expectations are for the positive change, as well as you design the research questions that you want to address or that can be addressed by doing this whole full cycle of a mixed methods action research study. Yes, but then again, jumping into reconnaissance, it's easy, but you really need to do your homework. You need to do the literature review and see what other interventions have been already. Maybe they have been reported and working in similar communities. Of course, everything is very context specific, which is one of the characteristics of action research, but there can be some programs that have already been designed in similar communities addressing similar issues. So you want to first learn from those and see what has been done, and then how these can be adapted to the needs, right, of your population, of your target group. And then with their also the do the literature review in terms not literature, so kind of doing environmental scan and seeing what, as I already said, what has been done in the community with regards to this issue. So some years ago, we submitted an application for a grant application to address like some white community, a certain community which already had like a clinic in the community, and are specifically like tailored to addressing the needs of the residents. Why the residents were still going to ER versus using the community resources, which is kind of evident. Oh, you have that clinic, why don't you go there, right? But you still go to ER and use all the hospital resources, and which is we know is very costly. So you first need to see what's going on in the community, right? And see what is there already before just jumping and just creating the new intervention.
Yeah.
And of course, this will guide the how you assess the needs. What needs to be assessed from which perspective.
Nice. Thank you. Uh, Another question we have, which is near and dear to my heart as well, it's from Kelly Reno, and she's interested in learning more about effectively engaging stakeholders, especially in diagnosis. But so, how do you court potential stakeholders, especially if they may be somewhat reluctant to join in on the conversation?
Yes, and this is a great question. We all struggle with this because, in best practices, it's recommended to establish an advisory board, right? Which is great. And we have a lot of examples in the literature, especially, reported on action research studies where they start with reporting how they actually establish the community, relationships with the community and creating an advisory board. And you know that Barbara Israel, who is working with the CBPR and her team, have been working for a long time. So she writes a lot about, she says you spend years establishing these relationships, right? But yes, having an advisory board is critical. And I would even say that, yes, it's fluid. People change. People are reluctant. People are not participating. You have to substitute them. It's always difficult. And we have had that in our projects, when we had to address those issues. So it's important to have that relationship with the community and have some kind of liaisons with the community, so that you can, rely on them to remain the people who are willing, you know, are willing to participate. Because not everybody might be willing. So if someone comes to me and say, "Hey, would you like to be on the advisory board?" I would probably say, "No, I don't. Thank you. I don't have time, right? Or I'm not interested." But you really need to have connections in the community and uh, kind of reserve that trust or establish trust, kind of like work for establishing this trustworthy relationship, so that because community has their gatekeepers, and you cannot have even access, or would not be even able to access the community if you don't have this good relationship with the community, and more importantly, showing them that you are there to help them rather than you are there to do your research. So we actually experience a lot of that with our own community here in Alabama, or in the past, because I know one of my students was doing a dissertation long ago, and we met with the community liaison because she was studying Black mothers' intelligence to HPV their daughters. And we thought that she would just come to churches and distribute the questionnaire. No, the churches would not want to accept her. Then we, met with the liaison, a person who was, working between researchers and the this church community. And then she told us, "You guys come, you take what you want, and you never come back." And we still remember the skills experiment. We still remember this and that. So it sank into my mind, because yes, and she was right. She was 100% right. So there are multiple methods reported in the literature and in practice how you actually build this engagement with the community. And I want to share. Yeah, we still have minutes. But I don't know. Maybe you are familiar. Vanderbilt University has this program. It's called Engagement Studio, where they would run focus groups with the community members before even researchers put a grant, starting and writing the grant. Because so they sort of run this issue by the community, and they conduct those focus groups just to explore, whether this is an issue of interest to the community or not. And this has been great for the researchers to know where they stand with regard to the issue and how they can engage stakeholders and what would they buy into the study or in the intervention if they get funded. So this is a great experience, and there are articles devoted to this. So if you Google, so you can find more information about this. But this would be one way, along with, of course, trying to establish the advisory committee or advisory board that works, that is effective or efficient. And of course, a continuing relationship, like communication. We know communication is a key. If you don't communicate with your advisory board, you would lose them. So keep this in mind as well.
Dr. Ivankova, do you see dissertating students setting up advisory boards as an answer or a gateway to stakeholder involvement, or?
Well, I would say yes, if the students, of course, have time, because it takes time, right? But as I know, your students to work on your MMR dissertations for quite some time, this may allow them. Another way, this is what I'm doing in my course. I'm using simulation, elements of simulation as a pedagogical strategy. In my course, we conduct three simulation sessions with students, teaching them how to actually work with stakeholders, because we don't have this capacity to, do any community or engagement during the limited time in the course. And I can share with you. And there are several publications that we have advanced, recently about, how you engage community with, your study. And so I can share it now. So what we did is that we translated that mixed methods again action research framework into 5 steps of how you engage the community. And for every step, there are certain specific actions that you do in terms of engaging the community with the designing of mixed methods action research study. So step 1, understand the problem and community needs, which is very obvious. Step 2, aligning information with the phases in the mixed methods action research framework. This is where you decide how to enter the cycle, right? Step 3, orienting to the mixed methods action research study process and building community research capacity. This is a very critical step, because you need to educate your community partners about research, about action research, about mixed methods, and potential ways of doing the study in a way that the community will understand, right? Because they're not researchers. And then step 4, designing reconnaissance or evaluation or depending on, if you do the full cycle, phases of the mixed methods action research studies, how you engage stakeholders with the study design and implementation. And then step 5, identify the next steps in the mixed methods action research study process based on the outcomes of step 4. So what we do in class, since we have only 15 weeks, we combine the first 3 steps into one simulation session. And then we do the second simulation based on step 4, and then another simulation based on step 5. And how we do it, if you are familiar with the principles of simulation, we allow each team, so we give very detailed scenario to the teams. And I have tried different formats. Depending on the size of the class, I would have groups of 6, teams of 6, and they are continuously working on their projects throughout the course. And this is how, simulation is part of that. So for one simulation, 2 students will be researchers, 2 students will be community stakeholders, 2 students will be policymakers or whoever they identify as the key stakeholders. And they have to rotate for every simulation session. This gives them the opportunity to be in the role and feel what it is like to be a stakeholder. And, I actually, I received great responses in evaluations of the course. Like one student wrote that I have been working in HME clinic for a very long time, but only serving as an HME patient in the simulation finally got me to understand what it's like to be a patient and what the patient's needs are. So this is just such a powerful comment. Yeah, and then this year, because we moved the course to spring semester, we have low enrollment, so we decided let's change and let's just the teams are researchers, and then the rest of us are stakeholders. It's actually working very well, because here it's very spontaneous, like it should be like in real simulation. And we challenge that. We bring in our own, we play the roles. Yeah. So it's very interesting. But the point is that this is a way, or some way to expose students to what it's like to work with the stakeholders. Because, they can write great in their narratives, right? Oh, these are the ways I would engage stakeholders. I would create an advisory board. I would do this. So that's, that. But then in reality, you fail because you're not prepared. So this is what we are trying to do.
That's excellent. That seems really interesting. And some of us may follow up with you to learn how we might incorporate some of that in our courses.
Oh yeah, sure. I would be very happy to share. I already making presentations and included this in some of the publications.
This has been super engaging, and I'm getting traffic in the chat, some direct messages too saying, wonderful, wonderful, love it. So this is great. We're down to our last 90 seconds. I'll let you have a minute to just a parting thought for us.
Well, I was just thinking about that. I just want to thank you all for your interest in and for doing a mixed methods action research, and more importantly, not being afraid of this. It's a lot of work, and not being afraid and not and guiding the students. Thank you very much for not being afraid to actually getting on this route and learning now during your dissertation work, and then applying later in your own research. Because what happens, sometimes, committees tell students, oh, just do some kind of dissertation to get done. And then you can do anything that you want. No, you have to learn now. There will be no way or very limited opportunities to learn later. Yeah. Just take whatever you can now and learn as much as you can as you are still in the program and get guidance to do it.
Great. Dr. Nataliya Ivankova, University of Alabama, Birmingham, guiding guide of our work.
Well, thank you. I'm humbled. It's so,
Thank you.
I just didn't expect it to be that way. Yeah.
No, but yes, thank you so much. And
yeah, I just shared my experiences, when I wrote the book, because I was put in the task, teach the class. So that's why, I had to conceptualize myself what to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I understand.
Yes.
So I hope this is just the start of our continued conversation.
Oh yeah, I would be happy to continue working with you, because I'm so impressed by your interest and the work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you. And everyone else who joined us today, thank you. We hope you have a great day, and we'll all talk again soon. Bye for now.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. Bye-bye.